Some of us are tired of living like strangers on our own street. We want safety and softness, not just schedules. We miss the warmth of belonging, the quiet joy of being recognized without explanation. Maybe that's why a simple porch light can still feel like hope. I've been thinking about how a neighborhood learns to breathe together. Some nights you hear only the hum of a street light, a faraway train, the small scrape of leaves. And then there is Halloween, when the same street finds its voice again, one porch light at a time. The porch light is our symbol, a small, steady kindness. It says what a sign cannot. You are welcome here. As twilight settles, bulbs warm the block, and pumpkins begin their quiet work. Orange lanterns with friendly faces, imperfect and sincere. It is ordinary magic, the kind that doesn't shout, only invites. I remember sneakers skidding on wet leaves, capes snapping in the wind, the click of costume masks when kids tilted their heads to laugh. Parents took the slow lane on the sidewalk, coffee steam curling from paper cups. Someone's speaker played a scratchy playlist, equal parts spooky and silly. Strangers waved like neighbors. Neighbors felt like family. Maybe you felt this. The lift when a door opens and the person smiling inside treats you as if you belong to the same story. We think we came for candy, but we came to be seen. There's a hidden ache here. All year we hustle behind screens and schedules, meeting our days like hurdles. We eat at the counter. We nod through meetings. We put off the conversation that matters. Then a night arrives that gives us permission to look up, to linger, to speak first. Sometimes we don't know how to accept the permission. The porch light helps. It lowers the threshold and turns a house into a hand extended. Children feel it first. They run in little flocks, fearless in imagination and certain there will be enough. The bowl is just a bowl. The welcome is the feast. The real prize isn't in the wrapper, but in the doorway. I think of Mr. Parker at the corner lot. No fancy decorations, only a clean stoop and a steady lamp. He learned our names year by year, even as some of us moved away and returned with new little ones. "Look at you," he'd say, "getting taller by the minute." His compliments were tiny bridges. You crossed without effort and still ended up closer. There's a scent to this night: damp leaves, candle smoke, chocolate, and wool. It's the smell of people deciding to show up. The city's shuffle softens, cars slow, dogs wear handkerchiefs, even the moon seems neighborly. Shoulders drop, voices choose a kinder tone, as if the street itself is teaching us gentleness again. Not every house joins in. Some windows stay dark. Life is complicated. Shift work, tight budgets, grief that isn't ready to be seen. We honor that privacy. But watch how one light changes the map. A single porch brightens the next, which brightens the next, until the block remembers its old language. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Maybe your October looks different now. Maybe your block is quieter, or your building has hallways where people keep their eyes down. Maybe you're new, still learning which mailboxes stick. If that's you, here is something simple and true. It's okay to start small. One smile on the sidewalk is a good beginning. One lit pumpkin is a conversation you can have without words. Community is the courage to be a little visible. Listen to the night. Footsteps, low laughter, the gentle clink of a ring against a bowl. A child says, "Thank you," and someone answers, "Be safe." And for a breath, the world understands itself. Light spills across the steps and finds your shoes. You don't have to push. You can stand and receive. If you're carrying loneliness, set it beside the candy wrappers and let it rustle with the same harmless noise. If you're carrying worry, let the lamp soften its edges. There's steadiness in ordinary rituals, kindness waiting in predictable things. We don't open our doors because we've solved loneliness. We open them because kindness is how we practice hope. That's why this small holiday endures. It trains us in neighborliness. We rehearse giving and receiving, practicing the feel of being part of each other's safety. Once you've practiced, you remember. Your body remembers how it felt when the porch light caught your coat and warmed it, just enough to make you linger. Tonight, notice the lights. Count them if you like. Let each one be a quiet promise that welcome is still possible here. And if your block is dark, hold the idea anyway. The way you cup a match and shield it with your hand. The night doesn't need to be loud to be kind. We'll carry this porch light forward. Next, we'll talk about the ache beneath the sweetness. The parts of us that long for this belonging all year and don't know where to place that longing. For now, take one slow breath on the steps. Feel the glow at your feet. Let the door's welcome settle in your chest. And save the feeling for morning. There's a quiet ache that follows nights like Halloween. The decorations come down, the candy bowls empty, and the porch lights fade, one by one. The laughter drifts away like smoke. And suddenly, what felt alive and full turns back into the everyday. Silent streets, curt nods, and front doors that stay closed a little too long. We tell ourselves it's normal, that people are busy, that connection belongs to childhood, to neighborhoods that no longer exist. But deep down, something in us resists that story. Because even as adults, with mortgages, inboxes, and lists that never end, we still crave what those small nights offer. The feeling of being part of something larger, softer, human. The porch light is still our symbol, a small promise that connection once existed. But now, some evenings, I stand by my own door and hesitate to turn it on. It's easier to stay inside, wrapped in the glow of screens, pretending I'm resting while scrolling through the endless noise of other people's lives. Loneliness doesn't always sound like silence. Sometimes it hums behind the light of our phones. I see faces on my feed, smiling at parties, hiking together, cooking dinner, and part of me believes I've missed the invitation. I forget that everyone is showing the same highlight reel, each of us half hiding the longing underneath. There's a weariness that creeps in with adulthood. It's not just physical tiredness, though the body feels that too. It's a soul fatigue. We grow cautious about knocking on doors, literal or emotional. We start thinking, I don't want to bother anyone. So we shrink our gestures, keep our distance, and slowly lose the courage to be seen. When I pass my neighbors in the hallway, we smile, but don't stop. We mean well. We're just afraid of awkwardness, of not knowing what to say next. But somewhere between politeness and self-protection, connection slips away. And yet, every once in a while, there's a tug, a reminder that we're meant to live closer than this. Sometimes it comes when you see a porch light flick on unexpectedly, or when a child's laughter echoes through the night. Something stirs, whispering, you still belong to the world. But belonging feels risky when you've been disappointed, when you've waved and no one waved back, when you've offered help and it went unnoticed. The heart learns to ration hope. It starts guarding the door. I think of Mr. Parker again, his lamp steady through the years. He never seemed to grow tired of greeting strangers. I wonder if he ever felt unseen too. If he ever looked out into the dark street and wondered whether the light still mattered. Maybe that's what courage looks like in quiet form. Turning the bulb anyway, even when no one knocks. Sometimes I rehearse excuses not to reach out. They probably don't remember me. They have their own friends. I'll sound weird if I ask. But these small fears stack up until they build a wall I never meant to create. Isolation rarely begins with rejection. It begins with hesitation. Maybe you felt it too. That split second when your hand almost waves but doesn't. When you want to say hi, but the words catch on pride or shyness. These are the moments where loneliness grows roots. Not because we don't care, but because caring feels too tender to risk. On darker evenings, I sit near the window and stare at the unlit pumpkin on my porch. Its shape still soft, its face faded by weather, but it reminds me of something unspoken. Connection isn't always about gathering. Sometimes it's about keeping the invitation alive, even when no one shows up yet. There's grace in admitting that you miss people. There's honesty in saying, I wish we were closer. We don't need to turn that longing into shame. It's simply proof that our hearts are still working. So if the night feels too still, know this. You are not strange for wanting warmth. You're not weak for missing laughter. These are the instincts that make you human. Let them ache without rushing to fix them. Because in that ache lies the seed of something good. The memory of how it felt to belong. And though the porch lights may dim for now, the longing itself is a compass. It's quietly pointing toward the next act of courage. The choice to reach again. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday evening. One of those nights when everything felt gray around the edges. I came home late, carrying the day like a heavy coat I didn't know how to take off. The porch light bulb had burned out a week ago, and I hadn't bothered to replace it. It didn't seem worth the effort. No one was coming by anyway. I set my keys down, scrolled through a few messages, and told myself I'd go to bed early. But as I passed the window, I saw a small flicker outside. Not my light, but Mr. Parker's, 2 houses down. His front step glowed the same soft amber it had every year. It wasn't Halloween anymore. There were no children, no decorations. Just one steady bulb shining into the cold night. It stopped me. The sight was so ordinary, it shouldn't have meant anything. But in that moment, it did. I realized I had been waiting for life to feel connected again, before I offered any connection myself. I'd been waiting for proof that community still existed, when maybe the proof begins with the light we choose to turn on. Sometimes, the invitation we're waiting for is the one we were meant to send. I stood there, staring at that porch glow, and for the first time in a long while, I felt both small and capable. I went to the drawer, found a spare bulb, and stepped outside. The air was colder than I expected, sharp and honest. My breath came out in little clouds as I unscrewed the dead bulb and replaced it with the new one. When I flipped the switch, the light spilled across the porch, soft but certain. It was nothing dramatic, just a quiet circle of gold on wooden boards, but it felt like an exhale, like something inside me had unclenched. As I stood there, I noticed the smallest thing, a child's bike, leaning against a mailbox across the street. Someone had left it out by accident, its reflectors catching the light from both porches. I wondered if that's what belonging really is. Small reflections bouncing back and forth. One steady beam making it possible for another to be seen. I thought about how easy it is to talk ourselves out of kindness, to say, it won't matter, it's too small, no one will notice. But maybe that's the real trick of despair, convincing us that small lights don't count. Inside, the warmth followed me. My house didn't feel as hollow. The walls seemed to soften. Even the quiet felt kinder, like it had been listening and decided to stay gentle for a while. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat near the window again. Outside, 2 porch lights glowed like punctuation marks in an unfinished story. And for a brief moment, I remembered what it felt like to live on a block that believed in connection. Not as nostalgia, but as something possible again. Hope often begins with maintenance. A bulb replaced, a step swept, a gesture repeated. The next day, I saw the child's bike gone, the mailboxes shining from morning dew. Across the street, someone else's porch light was on. Maybe they'd always kept it that way, or maybe they noticed mine. Either way, something had shifted. That night, when I took out the trash, Mr. Parker waved. Just a small motion, barely visible in the glow between us. I waved back. No words, no plan, no promises. Just two porch lights bridging the dark. It was such a tiny thing, but it felt like a door cracking open inside me. I realized connection doesn't always announce itself with laughter or crowds. Sometimes it arrives in simple echoes. One gesture returned. As I went back inside, I caught my reflection in the window. The light behind me turned it into a faint silhouette, and I thought, maybe this is how healing works. We turn on one small light, not knowing who it will reach, and in the act of offering it, we start to see ourselves again. Maybe the world isn't waiting to get better. Maybe it's waiting for us to notice what we can brighten. The next morning arrived quietly. Gray sky, soft drizzle, the kind of weather that asks you to stay under the blanket. But something inside me had already shifted. I found myself standing by the window again, coffee in hand, watching the rain fall through the glow of that same porch light I'd replaced. It felt almost alive, like a heartbeat for the house. There wasn't a single grand decision, just a nudge, the kind that whispers, do one small thing differently today. So I did. I baked a small batch of cookies. Nothing fancy, just the kind you make from the recipe on the back of the chocolate chip bag. I wrapped a few in wax paper, placed them in a tin, and walked down to Mr. Parker's. The street smelled of wet leaves and coffee grounds, and for the first time in a while, I didn't hurry through it. When he opened the door, surprise flickered across his face. "You didn't have to," he said, smiling that same quiet smile I remembered from every Halloween. "I wanted to," I replied. "For all the years you kept the light on." He laughed softly, a sound like the creak of an old porch swing. "Well," he said, "someone has to keep the street from forgetting itself. The world remembers itself through our small gestures." That line stayed with me all day. I kept thinking about the difference between waiting for connection and offering it. So I kept practicing small, ordinary acts. Gestures so simple they might have gone unnoticed if not for the new awareness behind them. When I went for my afternoon walk, I waved to the couple on the corner I usually just pass. I complimented a teenager's pumpkin art left by their gate. I held the door open for a delivery driver and didn't rush the thank you. None of it fixed the world, but it shifted mine. There's something sacred about the practical. Folding laundry, rinsing mugs, tidying the entryway. Each act feels like a way of making space for life to visit. I started lighting a small candle each evening while dinner simmered, letting its flame echo the porch light outside. It wasn't ceremony, it was a reminder. Hope is built in repetitions, not revelations. Later that week, I printed a note that said, "Take one, share joy," and left a small bowl of candies by the front step. Not for Halloween, just because. It felt strange at first, almost too sentimental. But when I checked later that evening, a few pieces were gone, replaced by a folded scrap of paper. Someone had written, "Thank you for this. I needed it." I didn't recognize the handwriting, and that made it better somehow. It meant the gesture had reached further than I could have planned. It reminded me that kindness doesn't always return the way we expect. It often circles through unseen routes before it finds us again. As the days passed, I noticed subtle changes around the block. More porch lights staying on after dusk. A child's chalk drawing spreading down the sidewalk. Two neighbors chatting by the curb about recycling bins. Nothing headline-worthy, just life breathing a little easier. Sometimes, while sitting on the porch at night, I'd imagine every light on the street as a pulse, steady and quiet. It made me think of how healing works. Not in bursts, but in steady rhythms, like blood finding its way back to the heart. And on evenings when the day had been long and my hope felt thin, I'd remind myself of this. Even a tired person can still strike a match. So I kept showing up in small ways. A smile, a note, a wave, a shared dessert, a listening ear. I didn't need the old neighborhood to return exactly as it was. What I wanted was simpler, to remember that kindness was still an option. And once you remember that, The world opens a little. Small acts don't fix life. They reveal it. One night, I caught my reflection in the porch window again. The light behind me blurred my outline, turning me into something softer. I realized that I wasn't just keeping the light on for others anymore. It was keeping me company too. That's when I understood. This was never about saving the neighborhood. It was about rejoining it, about remembering that every time we do one kind thing, no matter how small, we are lighting another porch in the dark. Some stories begin with grand moments, a promotion, a move, a heartbreak. But the ones that stay with us often begin in smaller ways. A porch light replaced, a cookie shared, a wave that lingers 1 second longer than politeness requires. These are not just acts of one person. They're reminders of something we all forget, the quiet power we hold to make the world gentler, starting right where we stand. Every neighborhood carries its own weather. Some glow with laughter, others hum with silence. But beneath every streetlight, beneath every doorstep, lives the same human longing to be seen, to be safe, to feel part of something steady and kind. The truth is, community isn't built by big events or organized programs. It's made from everyday faith, the kind that believes people still care, even when life gets loud and distant. Each time we reach out, even in small ways, we are whispering to the world, I still believe in connection. Belonging isn't a place we find. It's a practice we keep alive together. Think about the lights we leave on. In our homes, our hearts, our habits. Every one of them is a signal. I'm here. You're welcome. When you smile at a stranger, text a friend, or hold a door, you're not performing kindness. You're participating in the quiet construction of trust. We often underestimate how much these gestures matter. We assume people are fine, that our effort won't change much. But there's someone right now who's one kind word away from believing in good again. One small wave away from feeling seen. One shared light away from remembering they still belong to the human story. And if we zoom out, we start to see it. An invisible network connecting us all. One porch light sparking another. One act of courage inspiring a ripple of warmth we'll never fully trace. It's what Fred Rogers meant when he said, deep and simple is far more essential than shallow and complex. Simple things hold the deepest meaning because they meet us where we live. In the moments between errands, in the breath before a reply, in the choice to care even when we're tired. Kindness doesn't need to be impressive to be profound. Some of us grew up in places where doors were always open, where a knock meant friendship, not intrusion. Others grew up learning to protect our space, to be cautious, to survive first and trust later. Both are true, but even in a world that feels guarded, we can still choose small openings, a nod on the sidewalk, a shared hello in the elevator, a light kept on for the passerby. When we do, something in the collective air changes. People soften. The world becomes slightly easier to walk through. We begin to remember that decency is not extinct. It's just waiting to be practiced again. And maybe that's what Halloween, and every little holiday of connection, has been trying to teach us all along. That community isn't about costumes or candy. It's about courage. The courage to keep welcoming, even after disappointment. The courage to believe that the smallest kindness counts. When you light your porch, you're not just brightening your street. You're joining a shared act of remembering. You're saying to every passerby, I see you. You matter. We need that reminder now more than ever, because it's easy to forget, in the noise of modern life, that there's still a web of goodness holding us together, that each of us, in our small corners, has the power to keep it glowing. So here's the truth that humbles and uplifts at once. The world is held together not by systems or slogans, but by countless tiny acts of care. The ones that never make headlines but keep hearts from giving up. Maybe it's time to see our own lights that way. not as decorations, but as declarations. Proof that we still believe in each other. Proof that even in the dimmest seasons, we haven't stopped trying. The smallest light becomes a star when enough of us keep it burning. And maybe that's the real story of every neighborhood, old or new. We belong to one another more than we realize. And the work of remembering that, together, is the sweetest thing we can do. There's something about the final quiet after a holiday that tells the truth. The streets are empty again. The porch pumpkins have softened and sagged. The candy wrappers are gone, swept away by the wind. But if you look closely, there's still a soft amber glow in a few windows. A light that stayed on, not out of habit, but out of care. That light, I think, is our invitation. We don't need another event to practice community. We just need today, one small, ordinary day, to begin again. Maybe you're listening with your morning coffee cooling beside you, or sitting alone in your car before heading inside. Wherever you are, this is your moment to do one gentle thing that reminds you you're still part of something larger. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't even have to be noticed. Start with the smallest gesture that feels true. You could wave to the neighbor you've only nodded to. Leave a note for the mail carrier. Text the friend you've meant to check in on but kept postponing. Compliment the cashier who remembers your name. Water the plant by the window, even if it's half gone. Every small act says the same quiet thing. I'm still here, and I still care. Hope grows in the soil of tiny, consistent kindnesses. Think of your porch light, or whatever version of it your life holds. Maybe it's a smile. Maybe it's patience when someone's rushing. Maybe it's forgiving yourself for not having more to give. You don't need to be the whole sun. One light at a time is enough. Fred Rogers used to say that when times feel dark, we should look for the helpers. But what if today you became one? Not a savior or a hero, just a steady, quiet helper in your corner of the world. Someone who keeps a light on, literally or figuratively, so that others can find their way. Being a light doesn't mean you never feel darkness. It means you refuse to let it have the final word. Maybe tonight, before you close the blinds, you'll leave a lamp on in the window. Not because you expect anyone to see it, but because it reminds you of who you are. Someone capable of warmth, of invitation, of love. And if the world feels heavy, remember that kindness isn't an escape from reality. It's how we build a livable one. A kind word won't erase the pain of the news, but it might soften a stranger's day. A shared smile won't fix the cost of living, but it might remind someone, maybe even you, that compassion hasn't gone extinct. You have that power every single day. You don't need to wait for permission or for the perfect moment or for a sign that people will respond. Just light the porch anyway. That's the quiet revolution we forget we're capable of. A rebellion made of tenderness. A defiance that says, even when the world grows sharp, I will not stop being soft. Tomorrow when you walk outside, notice the lights still glowing at dusk. Let them remind you that connection isn't a relic of the past. It's a living thing that grows each time we choose it. And if the street feels too quiet, remember, you might be the first to break the silence. So here's the invitation I want to leave with you. Before you go to sleep tonight, pause by your window. Look out at your own version of the neighborhood, whether it's city lights, country stars, or just the soft reflection of your phone screen. Take a breath and whisper to yourself, I am part of this world, and I can make it warmer. Then do one small act to prove it. One that doesn't ask for applause. One that no one may ever notice, but that your own heart will recognize. Because every act of kindness leaves a glow behind. And together, those glows become constellations. When we keep our light on for others, we end up finding our own way home. And maybe that's what Halloween was always teaching us. Not to chase the sweetness, but to share it. to open the door when someone knocks and to keep the light burning long after the night ends.